When I first sat down with Aaron, I knew he was doing big things in pickleball, but I didn't realize just how big until we started talking. We're talking about someone who's co-founded Montclair Pickleball, one of the fastest growing pickleball programs in the Northeast, built First Serve Tennis from a COVID side hustle into a full-time operation, really leading programming across the entire Northeast. And then also launched what many of you may know as the Pickleball Clinic, which now has over 190,000 members in its Facebook group and 115,000 subscribers to their newsletter, with over a 53% open rate, which is actually insane. On top of that, they have more than 120,000 followers on Instagram alone with all the teachings that they're doing. But here's the thing, it didn't start with business. For Aaron, it started with raising $5,000 to help a struggling restaurant owner in his hometown. And that same energy that he got from there and that showed up in that scenario is the grassroots, the roll up your sleeves kind of leadership that is still what fuels everything he is doing today and what you see on the screen behind me. We talked about what it really takes to stay all in, how it affects your health and even your sleep and even some of your relationships. But why for Aaron and so many, it's still worth it. Aaron does not sugarcoat this conversation. He is very honest about the hard work that it takes. But he shows you what's possible when you stay grounded and go deep and really, really lean on your skill set. So let's get into this conversation. Every single piece of this conversation is worth every second. And there's just so much value and knowledge that Aaron has shared between growing the Pickleball Clinic, Montclair Pickleball, and First Serve Tennis. So really sit down, even get your notebooks out, take some notes. I promise you it's worth every second. Enjoy. Aaron, before Montclair Pickleball, or even the Pickleball Clinic scaled to what they are now, you were helping run GoFundMe campaigns for small businesses and founding charity-based organizations like Rackets for Africa. So where I am highly curious, and I'm sure most of our audience is highly curious, is how did those early grassroots really shape your lens on building community through pickleball today?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I could say it was plural in terms of GoFundMe's and organizations. There was one man named Johan who ran a place called Paraiso Cocina Dominicana in Montclair, New Jersey, my hometown. Small Dominican shop, couple minute walk from Montclair High School. He didn't have a ton of money to run the business. He was given a $5 lunch special to everybody, a great deal, and was just a great guy. You walk in the building and it's oozing with vibrant energy. And he took his car to the store every day to buy food and supplies, and it broke down. And so he said there was a chance he might have to shut down. And so this was beginning of senior year of high school, and my friend Calvin and I raised, I think it was $5,000 for him. We raised it in about 2 weeks, which allowed him to fix the truck and stay in business. I wasn't, I didn't negotiate this in beforehand, but while it was going on, he said, "Hey, if we get this done, I'll give you free food for life." And or as he said, "Free food for life." So he's great. Great, I love this guy. And yeah, we got it done. I've eaten probably that much in free Dominican food since then. And yeah, the Rackets for Africa was great. That was probably our third or fourth charity event that Matt and I ran since starting First Serve Tennis. We were approached, I think, on LinkedIn by a girl named Francisca, who I believe was a number one women's player in Ghana. And she just wanted to add value and bring tennis to the lives of women and children in Ghana. And we had a nice community. We still have a nice community of tennis players. And so we said, let's do it. So we co-founded this organization, Rackets for Africa. I'm not sure if she's still doing this. Really, we were involved for one campaign. So we raised, I think it was between 250 and 300 rackets. We sent them over to her. She distributed them with some friends around villages in Ghana and taught free clinics for women and children. So we were really proud of that. And we've engaged in a few other charity events. One of which for Alaska Wilderness League, which is an organization that protects the wildlife in Alaska. And part of that was a tribute to my uncle, Adam, who passed away to cancer about 3 years ago or so, who was one of the driving forces in my life from an entrepreneurial spirit, and someone who I always just want to support the memory of and the work and efforts of, throughout my entire life. So that was a nice thing we did. But I guess really the root of all of this, and to answer your question, from a business perspective, really comes from, this is probably a stereotypical answer to some degree, but 12 years old, shoveling business, door to door, walking around with my shovel, and being able to make 30, $40 shoveling a walkway, $60 shoveling a driveway was pretty cool for me. My grandfather, who was also my other entrepreneurial inspiration, um, made pamphlets for me the second year. So I went around putting them in mailboxes a couple nights before a big snowstorm. So we were taking reservations in advance, giving quotes in advance. So we were able to do the reserved houses at like 6, 7, 8 a.m. and then knock on doors after that. So that was really the cold sales intro, I would say. It got to the point a few years later where we were actually taking jobs, having other kids, go do this around I couldn't drive yet. So I had other kids who had cars go take the houses across the neighborhood. I'd make a little commission. And I guess there was a sense of community because they knew I was from Montclair, and I used the fact that I was local, and there was that emotional tie. And that, I think, was what helped build success. Um, I think another sense of community that sparked in me was growing up playing basketball. I had close ties with my teammates, and then when Matt and I started taking tennis really seriously, between Matt and I and the tennis players we trained with, we felt a sense of community, and we knew that for a really successful ecosystem, you need that sense of camaraderie, that love, that respect, and that community to be able to fuel something. So, a long version of your answer. I'm sorry, but I guess that's what comes to mind.
No, that was absolutely perfect. The question that I have while I was thinking through that is like, what about you makes you so emotionally connected to the work that you do?
Yeah, I think it probably comes from both my parents. They're both social workers. My mom is a social worker that works with kids with disabilities and elderly. And my father is a psychologist, a therapist, works a lot in the mind body, alternative medicine, works with cancer patients, Olympic athletes, night dreams, a whole bunch of stuff. Dr. Peter Reznik. I don't call him doctor, but that's if anyone ever wanted to look him up. Does a lot of incredible things. Um, and they both have solid careers, but they love what they do, and part of
Mm.
that is because it's helping people, and that was pretty important for me when I thought about what I wanted to do. I believe it was something important for Matt as well, where we wanted to be successful, be able to make some money, but we wanted to help people, and that's part of what makes me so excited about what I'm doing, what I'm building. What we're building in person and online is that has a positive impact on people's lives, especially when it comes to in person. And we've heard people send us long text voicemails or in person saying how we've changed somebody's life, or a young kid now feels confidence that he's never felt before, or somebody that was once obese or even suicidal now feels like they have a new purpose in life because they're playing a sport that they can find friends from and they can see themselves improving at, and even at the age of 50 or 60 they can still become really good at something new. So I think that type of impact is really empowering for the people that can help fuel that.
So what you're alluding to is both first serve tennis and Montclair pickleball. So you're kind of across both spectrums of racket sports here. What really, giving us some backstory here, what really allowed you to see that impact that you can leave both in tennis and pickleball?
Well, I think we did it in tennis from the beginning, and so we kind of, it was definitely, there was a natural evolution as to how it all transpired. If you want, I can kind of just go through the backstory of sort of how it started. Um, if you want me to go into that now,
Yeah, give
all
us
right.
it.
The spiel is, Matt and I, my good friend, my co-founder Matt Slowinski and I grew up playing tennis together. We met in middle school, played high level tennis. He went and played D1 at Holy Cross. I wanted to go to a bigger school I really enjoyed. So I ended up going to the University of Maryland, College Park, and played club tennis there. We both were giving tennis lessons since high school, I think since sophomore year of high school, just to make some money on the side. And at University of Maryland, I taught a little bit as well to make some money on the side. But when we actually, it was COVID. 2020. I was studying abroad in Barcelona, sent home early. We all were due to COVID. And so we both had some internships lined up. We had some good summer plans canceled off the table due to COVID. So we started a socially distanced outdoor summer camp for serve tennis, and something we had always kind of joked about, a vision we had, but it was a perfect place, perfect time. Obviously, an unfortunate situation, but you got to look for a way to make lemonade. And so we started socially distanced outdoor summer camps. Indoor clubs were closed. We did it well, I would say, to the point where we said, "Wow, this is pretty successful." So the end of that summer, we actually continued running our programs. We had online classes in the fall of our senior year. So we didn't go back to college. We continued running our programs senior year.
Hmm.
Then I think it was at the end of that fall when we both said, because I was looking at marketing and maybe going into marketing. Matt, his parents are lawyers. He was looking at going to law. And it was at that point we both said, let's actually try and do this full time when we graduate. And I know Matt, set up for a career in law. It's a pretty good career. For me, it's funny because I think a lot of entrepreneurs say that it's a risk to go in entrepreneurship. You're giving up a lot. Even if you're younger, it's still a risk because you're giving up some job. For me, I was looking at going to marketing or PR. I wouldn't say those are the highest paying fields or necessarily the most fulfilling. So to me, the way I think about it was actually a risk not to do that. And so when we graduated in 2021, continued running First Serve Tennis full time. And that's still business is still growing today. We have an amazing team of coaches. Um, we've seen a ton of our players that even started with us in our 10 to 13-year-old clinics and high school clinics now become really awesome coaches. We've had some coaches. Many of our coaches are top former college D1 players, coaches that have been coaching for years. Even a coach that Matt and I met at Maywood Tennis Club when we started playing in middle school, a coach that was coaching there now is one of our best coaches. But backing up a little bit to University of Maryland, and this is sort of the origin story for pickleball for me. First night of club tennis, I met a kid named Ben, and we became good friends. We play ping pong every week, and just playing tennis, playing ping pong. I think it was a few weeks into school. He said, "Hey, you should try pickleball." I got pretty good. I said, "Ben, that sounds weird. I'm not interested." I was a tennis snob, and he kind of said, "Okay, no worries." And then I think he was really humble because I don't think he told me this at all. But it was a year later. It was somewhere in sophomore year. I read a Washington Post article, and I wasn't sure if I was reading it right. My friend Ben Johns was number one in the world. I said, "What?" So I hit up Ben. I said, "Dude, what's going on?"
It's
He's like,
crazy.
"Yeah, yeah." So I was like, "Now I get why you're always away every weekend." And I almost got him to join my frat, but he was just like, "Dude, I just can't." But we stayed friends. He started a club at our school. He tried to convince me to play. I just didn't do it. I was such
Hmm.
a tennis snob. And then when we graduated that summer of 2021, Matt and I tried pickleball. We pretty quickly fell in love with it. We started teaching pickleball under our tennis academy, First Serve Tennis. And then I believe it was the winter of
Nice.
2021 where we just said, we need a separate brand here. We need a separate community. There's so much potential here. So we started Montclair Pickleball. And I think we did a couple things really successfully that allowed us to grow it to what it's become and what it's still becoming. We have good marketing. We built a team of the highest level coaches in the state, from a network of players that Matt and I became close with. When we fell in love with the game, we started playing, got to high level, got to 5.0 plus, low level pro, low level pro. I'm not going to gas myself up here. I think our highest dupers were like 5.8, 5.7. Now we're maybe down to like 5.3 because we're not playing as many tournaments. But Richard Liverneese, who I think you had on the pod, was one of our. He was kind of we had a sort of a foursome, me, Matt, Richard, and a guy named Dan. We were all very, very close friends, playing together every week for like 2 years. Now Rich is obviously big time, top player. I love it. But from getting good and building this network of players, we brought on a really high level coaching team. And so I think it was the marketing, the coaching team, and then just a focus on the customer experience, online and in person, was what helped us to grow. And so while we started in Montclair, um, we then expanded outdoors to Bergen County, New Jersey, where we built a long term home in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. We have 4 outdoor
Mhm.
courts and 2 indoor courts. We're adding 2 more indoor courts in the next month or so. And in Montclair, we were in Montclair for a while. We were looking for a long term home. Even before the Fair Lawn facility began, we built a 9 court facility in Roseland, New Jersey, about a 10-minute drive from Montclair. Those courts have been built, but there's a sort of been a zoning situation we've been dealing with for a while. And so for the time being, we built a 4 court facility at Caldwell University, about 6 minutes from Montclair. And so that's our home for Montclair. It's our Essex County locations. We have these 4 outdoor courts and have some expansion plans for those as well as the situation with Roseland. We expanded to a 3rd location, I'd say a couple of years ago, down in South Jersey. We partnered up with Alex Sipkowski, who is a 6-0 duper, amazing player. Long story short, he was a tournament rival of mine. We played in so many tournaments, a lot of smack talk. It was fun, but it was brutal. And then we ended up becoming really good friends with him. And he's our partner. He's a great partner, and he runs that location down in South Jersey. And then I know this is again a long answer, so I apologize. But when we started Montclair Pickleball, we wanted to do something bigger, and I think you might ask about potential failures, and so I'll save some of these for later. But we ended up deciding to build one big community. So we started the Pickleball Clinic as a Facebook group because Facebook was kind of where it was at with the demographic. We made it really open and inclusive. We allowed pretty much anyone to post as long as it wasn't hurtful or offensive. And we created our own content as well. So we grew that community. We grew a suite of social media platforms that I think now we're 500K or above on that, across all the platforms: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook page, and produced a lot of high level content. And we built a newsletter, which is about 115,000 subscribers, 53% open rate. And our focus as a media company, because we wanted to have a focus, we wanted to know who we are, is really, it sounds general, but the 95+%, 1 to 5% of pickleball players, some will say only 1%, really care about the pro world. Pro players are awesome, and they can bring a lot of value to the general player because of coaching advice, because of highlights, because of stories, etc. But the pro scene itself is not reaching and what is really valued right now by that 95%. And that 1 to 5% is active. They spend a lot of money in the pro world, and they love it. They're passionate. But we wanted to focus on the 95+%. So coaching content, news content, comedy content. And we built out a really amazing team, some of which are also full-time team members of Montclair Pickleball and First of Tennis, to just keep it in the family, if you will. And so that's really been the evolution of the Pickleball Clinic. Obviously, we had to monetize it and turn it into a business. So we work with brands and partners. We have a bunch of great partners. Yola was one of our first larger partners. They're an amazing partner. Franklin also is a great partner. We have a partnership now with one of my dream partners, Bombas Socks. I tried for a year
You
to get.
love them,
Love them.
huh?
Yeah, if you want a pair, I'll send you. I got a couple free ones. So,
I'll definitely try them, but I'll do a plug for somebody who we had on the podcast, Road to Pro. I don't know if you tried the Road to Pro socks yet. They recently partnered with the APP Tour. So they have grips on the bottom of the sock and in the sock. So you can imagine for tennis and really any racket sport, like when you, especially singles, even doubles too, when you stop and slide, like that little bit of movement sometime in the shoe is what is a make or break for me being able to plant and take that shot or be off balance and miss it. So
yeah,
because of that, this sock sticks. I'm throwing my pen now. Its sock sticks so well in the sock. I refuse to wear anything else. And it also helps me with foot function. So I've become like a huge foot function guy over the past 5 years.
yeah.
And I can now, rather than like when you slide on the floor, like when you walk around in socks, I can still grab the ground with my feet. And that's critical in order to keep your feet active while you're walking, right? It's my little
100%.
spiel, sorry.
Yeah,
I
no,
love
it's
the socks.
also for issues with sliding and stability, is just footwork in general. Doing
Yep.
cone drills, jump roping, is really key. Also, if you're at the kitchen, having a wide, low stance will help you with more stability, staying stable, and also be able to reach more balls. So help with your resets. So being shoulder width apart and getting low. The lower you are, the more stable you are. And just for so many reasons, the better position. The lower you are, the more downwards angle you can have on punches and counters. So there's a lot of benefit from having good footwork and also just getting comfortable in a low athletic stance. Um,
I will tell you for me personally, and we can talk a whole another hour about this because I'm also a pickleball junkie, as we talked about. But footwork has been a huge thing for me because I don't come from a tennis background. So like I have tried to study so much on proper footwork because the simple formula is the more I'm on balance, the more I'm going to hit my shots, right? The more I'm off balance, the more I'm going to either get caught off guard or miss my shots and have a miss it. So just the thing of like what the fuck a split step is was a learning curve for me and how to use it, right? And someone coming from tennis, it's just kind of like already beaten into their brain stepping on the court.
yep.
I would just run through shots because I have a lot of speed coming from hockey, huge speed guy, a lot of lower half, very quick. But that quickness can kill you often if you're on balance, if you're off balance consistently.
Yeah.
There's something in that story that you told us about how you've really grown all this that I think is really critical for our entire audience. And that is, and I didn't know I was going to ask this, but it comes to scalability. And the reason being is because when you're scaling a business, it's often very, very challenging to maintain the quality, whether it is the service that you're giving, whether it is the facilities that you're actually giving to them, whether that is the coaches that you're actually bringing on and joining your team. So how have you found a way to actually continuously scale Montclair Pickleball at size while maintaining the quality and the actual service that your customer and clients are getting?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I apologize in advance because I give a lot of comparisons and like, imagery. And so I have
Yeah.
one I kind of thought of, which is like if you're trying to build a really aesthetic house, right? You can build a couple layers beautifully, but if you want to have that same level of beauty on every layer, it's hard to maintain that. And so, how do you do that? Some would say use really good wood, use really good materials, but I don't know about materials. I think it's about hiring the right people to help build those materials and good contractors and good consultants, et cetera. So for us, I think one of the keys has been an amazing team, having just a really great team. One of our key hires early on was a woman named Rochelle. She was a player of ours, and now she was with us. She had left. She was part time with us. She had left her job, joined us full time, and she's operations manager for First Serve Tennis and Montclair Pickleball. She handles a lot of the communication and a bunch of other stuff. Um, and then with the Pickleball Clinic, she also helps out with some of our partnerships. So she has been a huge impact for our team.
Mm.
Not on the coaching end, but really on the back end. And we have a bunch of coaches. Leo Kupferman was the first coach we ever hired when he was in college. He was our first serve tennis coach. Graduated college a couple of years ago, joined us full time, and now he's an amazing tennis coach, amazing tennis player. He's now pursuing a career in physical therapy, but he's still coaching pickleball for us. So we introduced him to pickleball. I guess it was the summer before this past summer, and he just got. I mean, honestly, he probably got to 5.0 level in like 3 months because he was hitting topspin drops on his first day. He had that amazing tennis fundamentals, and now he's a really high level player, one of the best players in New Jersey. Coaches a lot of our 4.0, 4.5 plus programs. And, even when he moved on from full time tennis coaching, he had the huge passion for coaching pickleball, especially high level. So from the start till now, he's been a huge, huge key piece. I don't want to leave anybody out because there's so many important people. We have the guy named Adam Stone who started coaching with us on the side. He first reached out to me, and I thought this was the pro pickleball player, Adam Stone, reaching out. Hey, I'm a local. Can I coach with you? And I was like, oh my God. And then wait a minute, it's not that guy. But it turns out he's way. I mean, I love the other Adam Stone. I know him as well, but I'm so happy it was this Adam Stone. He was a comedian. He is a comedian. He used to do social media for the Impractical Jokers. He started coaching with us part time, and we would do comedy skits before the clinics. Hey, today we're going to teach you about dinks, but also excuses. And he go, the sun, the wind, this, your partner, all that stuff. So now he's full time with us. He left his job to join us over a year ago, and he's assistant director for one of our facilities. He does a lot of coaching, but he also spends, I would say, about 40% of his time maybe on the Pickleball Clinic. He's our writer. He writes our newsletter. He writes a lot of our ads. He creates a lot of comedy content as well. I think every Friday we publish a comedy video on the Pickleball Clinic with him. He's truly brilliant and still does comedy shows with his brother as well. They're Stone and Stone on Instagram. Um,
Yeah.
he's been a key piece of the team. But we have really so many others. I mean, I don't want to list some names and leave out others because there's truly just so many amazing people. But I think that's probably one of the biggest keys to scaling is having a really good team. So as you scale, you have a solid foundation.
So on the other half of this, which is kind of like getting we've really talked about the successes of scaling, but the other half is we have so many pickleball facilities opening across the nation since, 2021 and beyond that are heavily struggling, right? And really, whether it's those facilities or people working within them as third-party services, really, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing local pickleball facilities face that no one is really talking about?
There are a lot of people that see pickleball as a gold rush, and if you have some money and a location that you can just print more money from it. And I think the issue is a lot of people are opening facilities that don't even know about pickleball. They aren't players themselves, or maybe they're not coaches, or maybe they're not
Mm.
serious players or coaches or fans of the game. And I think that's really key in an environment, especially with a lot of um, similar clubs nearby. And so I think that the owner operator um, being really invested on a personal level is very important, at least in the early years. And I think that that's something that a lot of the clubs around here, in some in New Jersey, especially when you look at some of the franchises coming in, but probably around the country is really what's led to some of the struggles. Um, I think that's probably a big part.
When you're getting at with the owners and operators being intertwined, you mean being pretty much at the facility day in and day out, interacting with their members and even non-members and kind of building relationships with them while they're there? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, they don't have to be there 24/7 all day, every day. But, one of our pickleball mentors, you could say, is a guy named Tony Corbo. He is a partner at Randolph Pickleball Center. That's a tennis and
Okay.
pickleball club. And I think in the early days, he was super involved. I don't know if he's on the court all the time anymore. I don't think he coaches anymore, but he was there for a while and he still communicates with players. And I think probably to this day, when players come in, they still know him. They still have heard of him or they talk to him. And he was so involved at a certain point and still involved to a certain degree that he's allowed the club to be successful. So I do think to some degree you have to have that involvement as an operator.
I want to move into the next piece of this that you guys decided to expand into, which is media. And you guys have really taken off like a rocket ship, have had so much success since starting the Pickleball Clinic. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on numbers here, but I at least have that you guys, and I think you brought this up earlier in the interview, if I'm not recalling. Did you cross 200K members yet in your Facebook group, or are you roughly at 190 still?
191, 192, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so approaching, which is still crazy. And then you said you have 115K newsletter subscribers with a 53% open rate.
Yep.
That's pretty impressive. And then you just broke, I think, 120K on Instagram, correct?
Yep.
So the only reason that I wanted to dive into that is because you guys haven't dominated or even grown massively in one avenue. It's been three, right? Those can really be looked at as pairing and coupling in an ecosystem, but are three different things to master. So how did the Pickleball Clinic really grow into the number one online community? Like where did the problem that you wanted to solve stem from? What did you see an opportunity to capitalize on?
Yeah, I think, and I appreciate the kind words. I wouldn't say we're masters, at this point in any of those regards, but we're definitely learning as we go. And we have a few other platforms, like our Facebook page has, I think, 50K. I think we're around 50K on TikTok, and then our YouTube is around 200K as well. Um, you know, I think there's value in the fact that with short form content, you can leverage across a lot of platforms, and so you can post something to all platforms, which is what I recommend anyone with a local business, media company, consultancy, anything to do is if you're creating short form content, why not post it across all platforms? The problem we wanted to solve, I would say, is that there weren't any leading media companies solely focusing on that general player. There were other media companies doing a really good job of creating content for a whole bunch of different target audiences, but there was a lot in the pro scene. And to really buy into a media company and make that your main source of pickleball entertainment, I think you have to really be interested in almost everything that they're posting, or at least a large percentage of it. So I think like there's one of the leading media companies. I think they do a great job, and I have a good relationship with the owner. I have a lot of respect for them. Um, they also talk about a lot of pro stuff, and I think that to some degree that might break up their audience slightly, but they're obviously killing it. They're doing a good job, so whatever they're doing is working. I think for us, we wanted to focus. While we do involve a lot of pro stuff because we film at some of the tournaments, we interview some pros. We do a lot of coaching content with pros. We've been lucky enough to develop relationships with a bunch of pros that we film content with. But we really wanted stuff that was just going to be targeted towards that average player, coaching content, general news, memes, things like that. So I think that's what allowed us to grow. The Facebook group, the fact that we made it inclusive was important. Pickleball Forum was the biggest group for a while, and they're still large, but they don't have anything else around it. So it's just a Facebook group. So I think that's limited them. But then the other largest group at the time, I think now they're probably the third largest. I'm not going to go into any detail, but they, I think they were filtering where if you posted about one pro tour, you get banned, or if you posted about something they didn't like, or you disagreed with the owner, you get banned. And there's, a bunch of deeper stuff as well, but we were trying to be pretty open. And as long as it wasn't hurtful or offensive or a non-sponsor partner of ours posting, you could post pretty much whatever you want. And we encourage people to post their own opinions. And we would also post our own content in there, though. So on a consistent basis, the content that we're putting on Instagram and other platforms, most of it we're also putting in the Facebook group. So people could rely on the group as a way to find content and discuss it. And there's just a ripe environment for discussion, as there probably is in the other groups. But I think ours, I'd like to think, was one of the more welcoming, open groups. And if someone has a question, can I hit the ball off of the return in the air? Well, that might not be the best question if you know about pickleball, but someone could ask it. They might take a little bit of heat, but there will also be hundreds of people answering, trying to give them the right advice.
So what were some of the biggest mistakes then early on? Like, because getting into the social media space as a whole is highly complex, but also can be simplified if you know your audience and your niche. So, what were some of the biggest mistakes early on that you navigated, and what did you learn from them that allowed you to then take it to scale it to the numbers that the Pickleball Clinic is at today?
I think like once we got started, it was obviously a slower growth in the beginning, and then it sped up, and now we're growing a lot faster. But once we got started and kind of figured out who we were, I think that there weren't an enormous number of challenges, but we had some challenges before the pickleball clinic. So when we started Montclair Pickleball and we wanted to do something bigger, I had a couple ideas because I really wanted to do something else as well. So before Enhanced Pickleball, I'm the Dink Master. And I've told him this a bunch of times and we've worked together before. But I had the idea for a pad on the wall you could put a net on and all that stuff. I built a prototype. I put it on my wall for weeks. So I wanted to have a pad like that. And I said, maybe if that's successful, we'll do with something that's stands on wheels and you put it in
Mm.
you can put it anywhere. So I spent a lot of time and effort trying to build that out. Just didn't, I didn't try hard enough. Maybe I should have, but I would say to some degree that was a failure. I guess a failure, but I think as you probably know, and probably what you've part of the essence of this whole podcast is that, um, failure leads to a lot of opportunity. And there's some, I think it's a Chinese proverb that basically says crisis equals opportunity. And so, you know, I wouldn't call it just a blanket statement failure, but that was, something we put a lot of time into. I put a lot of time into, and it didn't really materialize. And then there was another idea: building online websites for every popular pickleball area in the country. So we built a site called northjerseypb.com, and that was mainly just to provide a resource for pickleball players in North Jersey. I didn't like going on pickleball brackets or tournaments to find all the tournaments. It was too hard to find. So I wanted a site that had all the tournaments listed beautifully. And so we had all the tournaments, all the local coaches, all the local courts, all the local clubs. We did South Jersey PB, Austin, Texas PB. And I bought probably 30 or so domains across like the whole country. And, I started trying to work on that. And I realized it would take a lot more time and a lot more money to turn it into what I really wanted it to be. And so, again, we learned a lot, but to some degree, you can call that a failure. We ended up just taking North and South Jersey PB, combining it. I don't know how this domain was available. I thank God that it was. We got NewJerseyPickleball.com. So now there's a site called New Jersey Pickleball that is a pretty popular website in New Jersey that we run. And it's a resource for pickleball players all around New Jersey and surrounding states, where we have tournaments all over tri-state area, every coach, every court, every club. And that's been a really great resource for players in New Jersey that we've really enjoyed building. Um, so those were two ventures in the pickleball space before Matt and I said, "Hey, let's just do a big community and build something that's a little bit more inclusive to anybody for anybody to join and enjoy." Um, Once we started the Pickleball Clinic, I do think there was a little bit of time trying to figure out the answer to the question, "Who are we? Who are we?"
Mm.
Online community. I think that if we're going to say we're the biggest online community, we would have to be talking about a Facebook group. And I think you could say community is an online forum, a place to have discourse. So to
Mm.
that degree, we are. But we're not the largest online media company. I think we're probably the third biggest pickleball media company by maybe a more standard media company terms of social media. And we still have to figure out who are we, what are we trying to do. The community aspect was important, largely based around Facebook. There's aspects of community in our other platforms. We do poll of the day every day on Instagram. We do questions throughout the week on Instagram. We do polls in our newsletter. So there was some figuring out sort of who we are first. But once we figured it out, you know, we kept rolling.
Listen, you've been giving such fantastic answers. You already went through a glass of water.
Yeah, exactly. I'm almost done with it. I'm gonna have to get some more in a minute.
Oh my God. Um, Getting into we're gonna bounce a little bit between um you brought up failures and lessons as a whole, as well as the pickleball clinic. So we're gonna bounce between a little bit of both right now. But I really want to ask you, like, what is your greatest failure?
Personally or with the business?
I'll let you pick either or.
Yeah, I guess personally that gives an avenue for a really creative answer. I'll think about that.
Yeah.
Business wise, I would say Montclair Pickleball. I mean, if I really thought hard about it, it would probably be some form of opportunity cost. Like we didn't do this, we didn't do this sooner. But I would say probably Montclair Pickleball. A basic answer would be we launched a fourth location in Central Jersey, and at that point we could say no matter where you are in New Jersey, you're 1 hour from Montclair Pickleball, which is pretty cool. I think still now you're like an hour and a half or an hour and 15 or 20, but we
Okay.
launched it in Central Jersey. There was an indoor club called the New Jersey Athletic Club. They had 3 indoor courts. The guy wasn't using them at all. He wanted us to come in, run the business there. It was a really great, it looked like it'd be a really great financial situation for us. And we had a great partner who could run that location. Um, he was going to leave his full time teaching job as a school teacher. We thought because we were in the middle of a bunch of other clubs that we'd be able to pull a lot of players, especially because we'd be the only one having true, consistent, high level programming. But I think
Mm.
because there were so many high level clubs, that was one of the reasons it didn't work out. So, that location, I think, ran for about 4 months. And then we decided not to invest any more time or energy into it. Um, First serve tennis, it's interesting because I don't think there were any huge failures. That probably sounds
Okay.
naive to say, but there. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely things we could have done differently or better. I think we expanded our clinic offering because unlike pickleball, where we have facilities, we do events, we do open play. Our first serve tennis, which has been around for like 6 years now, way longer, it's pretty much all clinics. It's all training. We don't do court rentals. We rent out facilities that we have long-term situations with, and it's all clinics. It's the same way Montclair Pickleball started, where people are coming to us not because of the facility, but just because of us, our marketing
Mm.
and our coaches and our programming. We expanded some of our offerings, like adding 4-year-old clinics, adding advanced adult, and I think we should have done that earlier. So there were a bunch of insights and key findings that we did from talking to players, from polls, et cetera, that I think again, it's not a failure per se, but there was a lot of opportunity left on the table if we had came to those conclusions earlier. Pickleball Clinic, I'm not sure, but I think I would just tie it to those other media ventures that we tried to do before. Personally, I'm gonna need another glass of water for that one. I don't know, Yeah, that's a good question. I got a lot of failures. But I mean, everybody has their own. I think when you look at somebody and you think everything's perfect, I think everyone has their own stuff going on. So you never really know, what's going on. Um,
Anything that comes to top of mind?
I guess I'm trying to think. It's a good question. So it's
The
a
reason I ask this is because there's often, with so many entrepreneurs listening too, there's like that chip that ends up on your shoulder that usually stems from a failure or a fear that you had that you decide to navigate and now kind of drives and pushes you forward today. So often the response is deep rooted somewhere within there when it comes to that personal failure that has carried with them through all this time.
I don't know if there was like someone I was trying to prove wrong or anything like that. I
Mm,
think it was more positive forces like my parents and my grandfather, my
okay.
grandmother, like pushing my uncle, like pushing me to follow my passions. Um,
So what about your family? What about them has just left this burning feeling inside of you to want to grow something so amazing?
I mean, my uncle Adam, who I wish so often was here with us to be able to see what we're building and to give me feedback. I can't, I don't do justice to try and describe his personality in words. But he was so out of this world in terms of a personality. He loves to argue like things he believes in, but he would love to make his point and make his case. He'd have these crescendos in his voice where when he's getting more passionate, he gets louder and this and he's a Mets Jets fan, sports fan. Brought me into my sad life as a Mets Jets fan. He did a lot of cool stuff. He was running like baseball leagues to Puerto Rico right out of college, and then he started he's great like at branding. He started like a sports fan club, and it was like the way he called it. I forgot what it was now, but it was like Sports Fans United, and it was like the only first like sports club by students, like something very specific. Where he was basically advocating, or his only sports fan advocacy organization. He went. There was like a lockout, and there's a video of him,
Mm.
Adam Colton, in Congress as a young guy arguing on behalf of this organization as a young kid,
Wow.
like advocating for sports fan rights. So he's done a lot of cool stuff, and then he really dedicated his life to the wild. He was a director, I believe, at the National Wildlife Federation, and then really dedicated most of his years, a job he had earlier, and then went on to lead and become the executive director of the Alaska Wilderness League. So they basically work to preserve the wild and the Arctic refuge mainly. And when he passed away, we took a trip out to that area, and it was a really powerful thing. But he always loved giving me feedback on the ideas and what we're working on, and his like the way he could craft a speech or a response or a written email was just incredible. So he was special. I already talked about my parents, who my mom is she's very just like do good and help people and like be a good person, and taught me a lot of personal values that drive like the good that I want to do in the world. My father is also really incredible figure. He came from Soviet Union when he was 25. Being Jewish in the military in the Soviet Union was very hard at that point. He was followed by KGB. It took him a while to get out of there, and came here with like $50 in his pocket, not really knowing the language, and is a psychologist and a therapist that's worked in so many incredible areas, from imagery to night dreams, to mind body therapy. So many amazing things. He's written a couple books, so he's taught me a lot. I think probably one, maybe a more American stereotypical thing, but it was very key, especially in Eastern Europe, which was you basically just take responsibility for what you do in life. Innocent till proven guilty, smart till proven stupid. But if you mess up, you suffer the consequences. And that's my parents were divorced when I was around 9 or 10. They're still very close. So that was great for me and my sister. But that was great. My grandfather, as I mentioned, he was a big force as well. He had a manufacturing business, so they made hangers. He's retired now, but he always pushed me to be entrepreneurial. And I think at some point he said, "Yeah, Aaron." When we started First Serve Tennis, and he knows my personality so well, he said, "Aaron, you're gonna work for yourself. You're gonna have your own business." My grandma is, I mean, I don't know how I would be able to do and be where I am without her. Like my grandparents are Mimi and Baba. So, Mimi, just like a life guide and mentor, so many areas of life. Talk to her about anything, gives amazing advice, conflict resolution. She's amazing. I have a little sister, Hannah, who's great. She's definitely helped me just learn to be, I think, a better person and kind of figure out a lot about myself. And then I have some good friends that have made good impacts on my life as well. Obviously, I'm talking about like my co-founder Matt, who none of this would have been possible without as well. And so, I think I've been lucky to have some good people in my life.
Have you always had such an optimistic view on life?
I think that if you want good in life, there's kind of no other way to look at it. I believe in energy and to some degree being able to manifest um, what comes next. And so I think that you have to look for the positive and to some degree believe that the way things turn out are they have some purpose. It's a tough thing to really think about when you think about my uncle passing and other things. People pass away and bad things happen to people that shouldn't. So I've always grappled with that for sure. Um, but I do believe in God, and um, I think that me being positive, and I think that's helped me be creative and open my mind to a lot of possibilities and ideas. And so I think it's important. And I would say I've probably had that mindset for, I don't know if I had a mindset or really an aura until I started the business.
Mm.
And then since we did, I have been.
Did you always know, even from when you started that business, that you were going to find success, or did you ever have a question mark of doubt?
I think success depends on a lot of things. I think the business, you could say, is successful. Am I a success? I think that could be measured in a lot of different ways. Um, I could lose some weight and be a little bit healthier. I would love to find a nice girlfriend. I'd love to get more sleep, and I would love to be able to still do as much as I'm doing with the business, but also be able to have a little more time for myself. And I would love the businesses to grow, but all of these health aspects of my life to figure themselves out over the next couple of years. So I'm not going to say that I'm success. I'm a success. I mean, I think that success might be achieving the highest potential of yourself, and I think that's what I'm setting out to do.
What
But
is the highest potential of Aaron Resnick?
I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm still going. Every 6 months, we're like, oh, we know exactly what the future is going to look like, and then something else evolves. So I don't know. I would love to continue growing these businesses for the foreseeable future for quite a long time. I really like entrepreneurship, and I've invested in two startups. But I love a future where I can be, whether I'm also running these businesses or not, very long term future, many years from now. I'm 40, 50 years old or maybe younger, but investing in young entrepreneurs and helping advise them, I guess mainly around sales, marketing, branding, team building, leadership, hiring, investing in those businesses and then helping as sort of an advisor. So I think there's probably a way I can make an impact there. And there are a couple other large business ideas that I have that I may or may not try at some point in life. But there's something relating to some of the work that my dad does that I think could change the world, and I would love to
Do
be able to give it a try. But that's probably going to take some time, and I'm not going to be able to focus on that for probably many years.
any of those practices that your dad has probably taught you or even instilled in you, do you use those today to keep you at baseline when things may be going awry or not as planned?
100%. I mean, mental imagery was probably the first thing that I learned when I was very young. Being able to close your eyes and use your
How
mind.
old?
4, maybe 5.
Wow. Okay.
He created this concept of the little man, where I would close my eyes, I would talk to the little man, and he would guide me through exercises, which now I can develop myself. And I realized it was sort of a figurehead, the little man. It was a way for me to grasp the concept of talking to my body. And so the first huge way this materialized was, I think it was my sister's third birthday. So I guess I was 6 at the time. When I was so sick, I couldn't even drink water. I would throw up. I remember this. And he guided me through an exercise that night. And I remember the next morning I woke up, I could drink, I could eat, I had a bowl of cereal. I had been sick for like a week. And so, till this day, when I have a headache, if I'm sick, I don't cure myself from being sick, but I use mental imagery quite frequently, I would say, from like an athletic performance standpoint. If I'm, playing a tournament or competing, if I need to relax myself, and definitely when I'm sick or hurt. And there's a variety of other things as well, but that's probably, I mean, I want to one day learn a lot more of what my dad does and be able to use it myself. Um, but he's very healthy now. He's had some heart issues, and there were times that I think he was more pessimistic on how things would turn out. And due to that, and just me wanting to consume all the knowledge that he has, I said, "Can you write me a book?" And so he's writing me a book of basically life lessons and teachings. Which, complete side note, but my grandfather, who's the oldest person in my family, he's in his 80s. I wanted to preserve his life and his story. And so I had this concept of doing a video series. And so for Baba, my grandpa, I call it the Book of Baba. And so over the last 2 years, I've been doing long form interview sit downs with him, where one is about his career, one's about his early life, one's about his family. And it's a ton of questions. I've completed that. Now I'm gonna do a video series of him walking down on his street and in his factory, and then I'll get interviews with everybody else from his family, and that'll be a book. I don't know if I get it made when he's still alive or not, but it's going to be a beautiful movie detailing his life that I'll have one of my great editor friends create, and I want to do that for everybody in my family. And so that's something I've been working on slowly. I'm not sure how we got here, but anyway, back to you.
Listen, that's the whole part of the podcast right there. Summarizes it in that one or two stories. I love that. And I might have to talk to you off air a little bit here, more in depth of how you're going about that, because I just think of wanting to do that for my own family, right? And you may have another business idea there for you, right off the top of mind. And you may be already considering that, but we won't get too far into it. The piece here beyond this is giving some advice to some of our entrepreneurs that are listening, and even creators or brands that may be listening as well. And it's mostly geared around how forward facing right now AI is. Meaning, if you aren't using it, you're going to fall behind the curve. And whether it's automation of workflows, whether it is actually developing and instilling AI agents, I know that you're somebody who is definitely in the weeds when it comes to how can I leverage AI to make my business not only more efficient, but also generate more value. So, what are some of the ways that you may be actually using AI to be more efficient with you and your team in order to keep those operating costs low while maintaining a significant amount of value for your client base?
Yeah, no, AI is an important part of all of our futures. I give a lot of credit to my co-founder Matt. he knows a lot more about that than I do, and helps me understand some things that I don't always understand as naturally. Um, Obviously, there are a lot of things that have to do with dealing with customers that I think are important to still do organically, because you don't want to mess up. You want to provide the best service, and so there are a lot of things. The vast majority of the things we do, we still don't use AI for, but
Mm.
we do use it in some ways. And I would just say, figure out what you think you can use AI for, and try to use it, and figure out a way to make it work, because using it in some shape or form, it's going to help parts of your business for sure.
When it comes to our creators, right? Because you guys have scaled the Pickleball Clinic massively. Are you using it to generate ideas simplistically? I know that every creator has their own workflows that may be proprietary to them. But when it comes to actual writer's block, right? Filling the gap between having an idea or sitting down and not having an idea and getting there. How are you using it to actually condense that writer's block period or that period where you just can't think of what the next thing to post is?
A lot of people probably are. I would say for us, mostly no. We want to be really unique and come up with our own ideas. And I have a talk every week with Adam, our writer, about the newsletter topics of the week. And I mean, there's some things like, hey, I want to come up with a bunch of like names for this business, like ask ChatGPT, and they'll give you a bunch of options. So things like that could be useful, but for us, we're not really using AI to write content, I would say.
What do then most pickleball creators and brands get wrong when trying to scale their social media?
It's an interesting question. I didn't prepare responses for any of these, so like
Uh,
normal, I'm pretty just on top. I think that so. Look, a lot of people say, and a lot of creators will say, "I heard this advice and I'm taking this to heart." Be yourself. Like create whatever content feels most natural to you. And I would say, yeah, that's awesome. You'll have a lot of fun with it. You'll enjoy it, and you might enjoy having 3,000 followers. I think you need to find the cross between what you enjoy and what's natural to you and what you're good at, all that stuff,
mm.
and something that can bring value to an audience. So Tanner, Tanner Pickleball, Tanner Tomasi, a friend of ours. He started in pickleball space. He was a co-director actually of one of our locations, and I've just been like super passionate seeing him grow what he's doing with his content and as a pro player. He was doing Fortnite video games before, and he wasn't really. He was making some pretty good money with it, but I think he was trying to figure out how to move on from that. And I don't know if necessarily creating coaching content was what he first had in mind. I think he actually had a couple other ventures he had told me about in mind. But he said, okay, I'm passionate on camera. I can transmit my energy and enthusiasm through a screen to anybody in the world, and coaching content's in demand. So when those things intersected, um, and he probably tested, he started a little bit, he saw some success, then he poured gasoline on that. So I think you have to find something that you're good at and you're passionate about, but also that if your goal is to create X, then you need the ingredients for it to actually be able to scale to that degree.
Is that a reason you guys include so much comedy into your content today? Because you feel like it's a piece of you?
Yeah, and some would say that it kind of takes away from like the coaching and the news, or even that the news takes away from the coaching, because our coaching content is so important, so core for our audience. But I would say it's a piece of us. Adam Stone, as I mentioned, is a big part of our brand, and allowing him to be able to create comedy content, use his personality and individuality is really important. But yeah, we were creating memes even before he was creating comedy videos. I think it's a part of us, and when I say us, I mean the 95%.
Yeah.
People love comedy content. We love comedy content, even though we also like the pro world, and we have those friends in that world, and we play at a high level. We also feel very part of that general player and fan as well.
So the last piece of your journey here before we dive into what our closing questions are. is that you recently started Court Connections. Do you want to really tell us what Core Connections in is and why you guys have seen it as another opportunity to attach onto your ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really enjoy coming up with creative events for our Fair Lawn facility and eventually our other facility as well. We started doubles for singles, which was a singles event for 25 to 35, 35 to 50, 50 plus. We got featured on Fox. They came and did an interview. Of course, we had to follow that up with doubles for couples, pickleball and pizza. We just launched family play. We just launched partner mixer, where you can sign up with your partner and practice together, or sign up alone and we'll pair you with somebody. So we wanted to continue to come up with creative events, but like doubles for singles, we also wanted more events that bring people in and onto the pickleball court for a main reason other than playing pickleball.
Mm.
And I thought that was really key to show people the value of pickleball, organically get them involved, promote our business to a new audience. And so Court Connections, the name was inspired by LinkedIn connections. Thank you, Reid Hoffman. It was a way to connect local business owners. The first one we did and the second one are free. I'm not sure the evolution of that model and what we'll do, but it's a free event, open pickleball courts, food, drinks, nice, really good food, good catering, music. We had Adam Stone do some comedy at this past one. And, we wanted to bring business owners together to hang out, to have fun, to meet like minded people that are starting running their own businesses and maybe create some connections from that, whether it's people looking to cross promote, joint ventures, product plays, whatever it is. We thought we could create some magic and some relationships the same way we're doing between singles.
It seems like it's even beyond that, where, like you just said, with singles, you may just be building general relationships, platonic or romantic, etc., beyond just business networking relationships. So I think that there is, and this is what you guys have seen, and we started the podcast this way, is that pickleball just leaves this impact that like no other. And there is a piece of it that so many people are playing it today. However, the other piece of it is the fact that like a massive leveling playing field because you can still compete with drastically different skill dynamics on the court, right? So I think a prime example of that is you can in doubles isolate somebody out of the game. You have the ability to do so. So I think with having different ages, different demographics, different skill levels, all being able to play the same game and connect over it, I think that just something so magical about pickleball. And like you said, why not use that same energy, that same tool to bring people together to create even more value, whether it is platonic relationships or business relationships. So I love that. I love it. I love it. Um, do you think this model will end up expanding to other cities? Do you think other parts of the country will end up doing something similar or already are doing something similar?
I mean, I would say that there are other cities that we're looking at. Um, there are a few people out there that I think are taking a really creative approach and really listening to their community. And I think that the more people involved that really know and love the sport and live and breathe pickleball, I think the more of these types of communities you'll see.
Mm, yeah, I think I mean you're active on LinkedIn. You see how many people are connecting over pickleball via LinkedIn, and that's only going to get ramped up as the sport grows as a whole and the industry continues to grow. I want to say I saw numbers of just like the gear market industry for pickleball was at like 1.4 billion, I think, in 2024, and is projected to be like 4.4 by 2033. So massive amount of growth, massive amount of scale, massive amount of opportunity to connect. Um, some closing questions for you here. And this is where we may dive into a little bit more of the emotional cost associated with being an entrepreneur.
Wait, let me just jump in real quick.
Yeah,
A shameless plug because you did the sock plug, so I'll just say a plug of like with the gear market. One of the things we do amazingly with the Pickleball Clinic is help connect some of those brands with our community
yeah.
of millions and millions of players a month in our newsletter and with content. And that's been really fun for us is to not be a paddle company, but be a middleman and story tell and use our incredible team that creates content, that writes content to be able to share some of these brands with the world. And so that's always something we love to do. So feel free to reach out to us if anyone wants to work with us.
So for anybody that definitely will be wanting to reach out, we'll tag all that in the show notes. So there will be links there that will pull you directly to Aaron and the Pickleball Clinic in the page.
Cool.
Getting into those final questions, even though you're avoiding them a little bit. Uh, what's been the hardest or loneliest moment of your journey?
The loneliest moment, the hardest is just the grind. We work. I mean, there are days I start working at 7, 8 a.m. and I'm going to sleep at 2, 3 a.m. Um, there were a lot of days that those hours were pretty consistent earlier on, and now I'm not seeing as many of those days, but there's still a lot of 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. I think that's a pretty often situation for me. Um, Loneliest, I would say I know that my co-founder Matt is very lucky. He has an amazing girlfriend that he's now engaged to. They live together, and so I'm sure for him it's a great way to be able to connect outside of the business, cool off, blow off steam, and just enjoy life in another facet. Um, right now, I'm single, and so you know, I was in a really great relationship, but it didn't work out. But I think probably being single for a good bit of time is a lonely factor. I love being able to see my friends and have flexibility, etc. But I think if I was with somebody, um, that would probably make part of the journey less lonely. I would say.
Is that a chapter you're looking to prioritize in the coming future?
Yeah, I guess a lot of people would say if you're really looking for it, like search around for it and work hard for it. I kind of am more a believer of those situations will come into life naturally, more organically. I do think my dad has said to me, I have to tell myself that that's what I'm looking for those opportunities to come. And so I think I have told myself that that's what I'm looking for. Um, but I wouldn't say, I'm not, you know, planning my day around doing this thing to try and find a girlfriend, but it's definitely something I want. And I'm very open to.
Do you do you struggle to set expectations on yourself with the visibility that you guys now have at scale, with knowing so many people are now following you guys, learning from you guys? Do you set expectations sometimes that almost cripple you would be the wrong word, but what I'm getting at is feel like you maybe aren't living up to them and they're your own expectations that you set on yourself.
We're just having fun, man. I mean,
I
like,
love that.
there's all this. Let's just say NBA. There's all this. There's critics, right? Everybody talks. Everybody says whatever the case may be. Um, I don't know, an average player that takes some heat. Dame Lillard, isn't performing as well as he once was with a huge contract. He might answer questions about that, but when you ask him, like, he's doing well.
Mm.
He's has a good contract. He's still a great player, and so he's trying to do as good as possible. But I think it's just an internal ambition to be great, and that's what allows a lot of successful people to be successful, or to be successful in business or in their career. And so one thing I said to our coaching team at the end of our last team party, um, was that we are with tennis and pickleball clubs all around us. We're running a race, but the only person we're trying to beat is the version of ourselves from yesterday.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's really the ambition is just to compete with ourselves and to be better than we were. But we're doing fine. I think we're doing well. So we're not worried or stressed. Everybody that supports us or follows us, we appreciate it. We love it. It's fun. And if someone feels like we're not meeting their expectations, um, I don't mind. We're taking it day by day, and we're doing what we want to do, and we're enjoying it.
This rolls into our final closing question, which is perfectly set up. And that is, what is your greatest fear moving forward?
I would say, because I always like to just give it off the top, whatever comes to mind. Some of those health related struggles, I guess you could say, of just trying to find more time to be healthy, to get more sleep, etc. Which it's almost like I want to do those, but sometimes I'm just so consumed with thought and ambition and passion that I'm not able to. But I have to treat that like a priority. So I'm afraid of my lack of prioritization eating into real physical health, and then also eating into our ability or my ability to help us be successful as a business.
Do you do you regret not prioritizing that earlier?
No,
Okay. Tell me why.
my dad probably hates that answer, but I just don't know if we would have done as much as we've done if we hadn't. I'm sure Matt wishes he got a lot more sleep. I know I do, but we were up doing important things, and we were making a lot of headway in those late nights. And I think that now we're at a point where we're not we can live, we can survive, we're doing well, we're growing our business. I think it's an appropriate time to try and filter in a lot more of those healthy habits, but with the idea that if you change something in the past you don't know how the dominoes would then evolve, I wouldn't change anything.
So with knowing that you made that sacrifice, what would one thing in the sport of pickleball that you would want to be remembered by for? Like what would you want to be remembered for in the sport of pickleball, knowing that you made this sacrifice on your health in order to just grow so extensively and help the sport grow?
Like me personally or the one of the businesses.
Yeah, let's say you personally and the business. I mean, you're tied to each other.
We, I mean, this is probably a stereotypical answer, but I think that we helped um, tens of thousands of people in person learn to play the sport and get really good,
Mm.
and online helped hundreds of millions of people get really good, be entertained, grow their love for the sport. And if our core connections events creates new business partnerships and doubles for singles, creates some families and our doubles for couples, can help couples find more love and passion in their marriages. And if pickleball and pizza helps people looking for friends and more community in their lives, and if our Matt's coaching content helps people get better, and if our news helps alert people about what's going on in pickleball, if that all happens, which is happening currently, or we're trying to make happen, then that'll be great too.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I I really hope that everybody listening, if there's one thing that they can recognize, it is that you yourself and what you guys are doing is driven by so much impact and emotional tie to that. I think there's anything that I took away from this conversation is that what you guys are doing is just rooted in so much fulfillment, enjoyment, fun, and at the end of the day, wanting to leave an impact when this journey of us at 85 or 90 is coming to a close, and we want to reflect back and say that we did everything that we wanted to do, as well as left the impact that we wanted to leave. And it seems that you guys are just the epitome of being on that journey and being right in the heart of it. So I appreciate you sharing every bit of that on the podcast today, and I'm just really, really thankful for having you.
Appreciate you having me on. I love what you're doing.